So got to wrap up a nice conversation with that young gentleman there, and wanted to share some thoughts on some things that came up in the conversation that I think are important, especially when it comes to parenting and parenting relationships with kids, especially adult children, but even in all ages and stages of life. So parents, of course, I always talk about how it's the hardest and biggest responsibility or role that someone can have in their life, and one that obviously should be taken seriously. But of course, because of how difficult it is, we know it's challenging. Lots of mistakes will be made, and you should be trying your best, of course, but knowing that there will always be shortcomings in what you do. And because of that, we should also take it seriously, and that we first look at ourselves and who we are, because our own histories, what we've been through, who we are now, our personality, the way we view things, that's obviously going to have a huge impact in how we are as parents. But also we need to study and learn child development, psychology of child development, different techniques when it comes to from raising your kids to physiologically what they need, all sorts of things. We need to put the time and effort, so we can't just say this is an important role and a big role, but I'm not going to do anything to prepare for it, or just I should be able to do it. A lot of times people will say things like, well, being a parent, it's a natural thing. There's a natural part of us that's being parent, a paternal drive, a maternal drive. And so, yes, the desire to be a parent can be very natural and innate for people, and they can want it very badly. But it doesn't mean being a good parent is something innate, that you are just naturally good at parenting. There are some drives and pulls. Let's say you see a child crying, you're drawn to them to want to take care of them. So it doesn't mean we have no preparation in some way innately to be a parent. But again, it doesn't mean you'll be good at it. Just like the desire to be with someone romantically might be there, to have a partner, to be with someone, but it doesn't mean you're just a good partner right off the bat. So the same things apply of understanding yourself, learning about yourself, and then also learning about relationships and what it takes to be a good partner. That's important. You also want to make sure you do what it takes to be a good parent, which involves learning, evaluating, and continuing to learn and evaluate, because it's not going to be something that once you know, you're done. As you are a parent, you have to keep learning as you go. But another aspect I wanted to focus on is parents. Also, of course, we think, well, I'm teaching my children about life, about how to live. And that's all very true, especially when they're younger. They're looking to you, they're modeling you, whether you want to teach them something or not. They're watching you, and so they're learning from you. So we have to do that, of course, when they're kids, and as they get older, you continue doing that. But we also have to recognize that we have to be aware of our relationship with them, not just being about, I have to teach my kid certain things, or what I see very often now is I have to be my child's academic manager, and the thing I'm just worried about is their homework, their classes, the teachers, what classes they take next, what does this mean for their college and all that. Partially, I think it's because in countries like the United States, college admissions has become this crazy process that's way too competitive and way too unhealthy, in the sense that what we're asking kids to be or to become is not even something good. So to be a good candidate for college admissions often means not being a healthy human being, not being well-rounded, not really doing things because you like them or finding that you enjoy them, but just so you check some boxes off to meet the requirements of grades and APs and extracurricular activities and leadership activities and musical instruments, all just to look good on paper to these schools. I think it's very unhealthy, and oftentimes I think it's led to parents feeling this unhealthy pressure that I have to get my kid into a good college because that's all that matters in life and going to make them successful. So that does become the focus. So some of it, I think, is related to that. But overall, parents at times can be more focused on managing their kids and their life in certain ways rather than having a relationship with them. Or I very often work with families where they want to have their teenagers stop doing something, stop smoking weed or using a vape or drinking or doing whatever it might be. And they become focused on that. And sometimes the relationship becomes all about that. Is the kid smoking or not is the only thing that is really involved in the relationship between the parents and the kid. Nothing else really matters. The kid comes home and the parents are checking their eyes or trying to smell or look around or see who are they with, what did they do. Even sometimes they want to do drug tests or different things. And the whole focus becomes on this issue of this one behavior or action. And so what I tell parents a lot of times is that if we really look at it, you can't control your kid's behavior. So if your kid wants to vape, I'm not saying I want them to. I think it's very bad for them. It's not healthy. So I understand your desire for them not to do that. But for you to think you're going to be able to completely control it, it's almost definitely not possible. So you can't stop that from happening. But what you do have in your control, or at least a lot of your control, or you can have an impact on, is your relationship with your child. And so this came up with the previous caller that I was telling him, since he said his father had recommended he call me, was that I would hope his father focuses more on his relationship with his son rather than his son's relationship with his girlfriend that he seemed to not be in favor of. Because, first of all, making that decision for him would not, to me, be the right thing. But on top of that, that's much less in his control than his relationship with his son, which we both agreed clearly could use some work and needed help. So I hope that will happen for them. And so if you're listening to me talking now and you're a parent, you might be thinking, I need to get my son or daughter to do this or to stop doing this, get them motivated, get them to study more, get them to do this more. And you do have impact on those things, but you want to make sure you're definitely not approaching it in a controlling way and realizing that they have to want to do or not do whatever it is that we're talking about. But the other important thing is to realize if you focus so much on controlling some behavior, what you're going to do is you're likely not going to control anything. You're not going to get them or to do something or not get them to do the thing you want them to, whatever it is that they're doing or not doing, but you're going to damage your relationship with them. And that's something I've seen time and time again, that there's no more relationship. It's just this management and this kind of punishment and this kind of cops and robbers or, prisoner type mentality where we're just going to control you, but there's no longer a relationship with your child. And that's your primary responsibility, is to have a relationship that is a full relationship with the kids that you have. Do they talk to you about other things other than school, if that's a thing you're worried about, or other than what they're doing or not doing? What I see happen often is kids might be doing something their parents don't like, or they don't think their parents like it, or their parents give them a hard time, and they get more and more distant. So yes, in the teenage years, your kids are going to talk to you less, but often I see families and work with families where they say, oh, our kid, he or she just goes to their room and doesn't talk to us at all, doesn't tell us anything. And part of that can be because when they tell you something, it's followed by 20 other questions, or it could feel like an interrogation, or can feel like they can say something. It's kind of like what, the Miranda rights they read here in the United States. Anything you say or do can be used against you. So they're afraid to say something because it might be used against them. So if that's the case, you're better off not saying anything at all. So by trying to control your kids, what you're essentially doing is you're squeezing kind of the life out of your relationship with them. I'm going to get them to stop doing this because that's going to make them happy and good. You're not realizing that you're not going to get to control that thing. And on top of that, you're just squeezing them and pushing them away from you rather than helping them. So what is in your control is your relationship with them. Not 100%, because of course, if there's two people in a relationship, they obviously have to play their part as well. But especially when you're a parent, a lot more of it is in your control. You are still, even though I try to encourage things to be less of a power struggle and dynamic, you're still you are the authority figure in that relationship. So you can dictate much more of what's going on. So the relationship is much more in your control. Their behavior is not. And if you focus on trying to get them to do something or not do something, you're just going to damage the relationship without getting this result that you think is going to be helpful for them anyway. And on top of this, we also have to be aware that as they get older, this dynamic more and more has to change away from I have to tell them what to do or get them to do this or not do this, to letting them make the decisions for themselves. Even from a young age, we want to make sure we're giving them enough agency, enough authority and responsibility in their lives, but especially as they get older. And so you have to ask yourself, it's not just if I know, which first of all, that no, you should doubt yourself more than that. If I know what's right or wrong for them, and if I do, I have to tell them, get them to do it, to actually realizing it's about them going through life and growing and living. If they're in a relationship, rather than saying you have to do this, don't do this, start doing that, not even be with them or date this person or not that person, you need to let them go through a process of meeting someone, dating someone, having the ups and downs in the relationships, because that's how they grow. Growth isn't just about you don't make mistakes or you make what's quote unquote the wrong or the right decision. It's about going through life and experiencing things and learning from those experiences rather than just the choices being right or wrong. So as your kids get older and get into their teenage years and then get into being a young adult, you want to be very aware of how much am I telling them what to do, because you're not helping them. If anything, you actually are more likely to be hurting them. And so what I've seen is a crisis in young adults. I work a lot with Iranian families, but in general, where because there's been a lot of controlling and a lot of making the decisions, telling them you don't know what you're doing, I'm going to tell you what to do. When the child and now young adult has to make big decisions about what to study and what type of career to pursue, who to possibly date and marry, they feel very unprepared to face life and to make these decisions. Because they've been told, one, the decisions have been made for them. Two, by the decisions being made for them, you're also implicitly and sometimes even explicitly telling your child you don't know what to do. You're going to make the wrong decision if you make it. I have to make it or someone else has to make it for you. So now when they're thinking, what should I do? They don't even think to ask themselves, or they're too afraid. Or if they do think something, they think, oh, how do I know this is right? Or I was told so many times what I think is totally wrong is not the right thing to do. So I don't know. And so, I can ask them, what do you think you want to do or what do you like? And they can feel very blank and very stuck. I have no idea. I don't know at all. I think partially they maybe are unsure, but I think also they're not used to even hearing that voice within them that might tell them what they should do or what they need to do. So this goes back to one of the aspects of parenting, that you're not just preventing pain, you want to promote growth, which means allowing your child to go through discomforts, letting them first of all have the faith, or showing them you have the faith that they can make the decision themselves and that they can deal with the decision's consequences, whether they're good or bad or somewhere in between, and learn from that. But if you just think, okay, my kid can do this or this is better, let me make sure they do that, you're taking away a big aspect of life and of growth, which is choosing, contemplating, making a decision, and then dealing with those consequences. So I hope parents listening will keep this in mind when you're dealing with your kids, that even from a young age, let me make sure it's not just about what's good or bad or what I think is good or bad, but let them make decisions on their own. And as I said it in a very brief way, but also stress here, this concept or idea that I know what's right for them. You really have to question that knowing that you have. You have a feeling, you have a preference, you think you might know, but you have to humbly understand that you don't know what's best for someone in any situation. Parents will tell me all sorts of things. I know this is best for them. I know this is right for them. You have a feeling, I prefer they do this. I don't want to talk too much about the previous caller because he's no longer here, and even the father who I'll talk about just now quickly, saying learning the language or keeping the language. You have a feeling about that. It can be good, and it's not bad to know a language, but to say, he didn't say this, but let's say, no, it's better for them to do this. There's a lot more to it than that. So we have to even recognize, I don't know what's necessarily best for them to begin with, and even making the decision for them might not be what's best. So remember that your kid's behavior, and especially your teenage and adult child's behavior, is not in your control, nor should it be in your control. But what is much more in your control is your relationship with your child throughout their life, and realizing that your role as a mother or father is not about controlling and making decisions and managing, but about having a relationship with your child. All right, let's go into our last commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. We'll be right back.